The American migration map is being completely redrawn right now, and if you're still looking at the same cities everyone talked about 5 years ago, you're already behind. Between 2024 and now, something fundamental shifted in where Americans want to live and why, and the cities dominating this moment aren't the ones you'd expect. We're not talking about incremental changes. We're talking about housing markets that saw demand surge 40 to 50% in less than 2 years. Job markets that added tens of thousands of positions while other metros shed them, and quality of life metrics that finally aligned with what people actually want instead of what they've been told to want. The deadline hanging over this isn't arbitrary. By 2026, the early movers will have locked in prices and opportunities that will be completely out of reach for everyone else, and the data from the last 18 months makes it crystal clear which 15 cities are capturing this moment. Let's start in Raleigh, North Carolina, because what's happening here is a masterclass in economic timing. The Research Triangle isn't just growing, it's absorbing talent at a pace that's reshaping the entire Southeast. In 2024 alone, the metro added over 40,000 new residents, and the jobs driving that growth aren't remote work spillover. Apple's expanding its campus to employ thousands more. Biotech firms are building out massive facilities. The unemployment rate sits below 3%, which means if you have skills, you have options. But here's the part that matters for anyone actually considering a move. The median home price is still around $450,000. Compare that to what you'd pay for equivalent space and job access in Seattle or Boston, and you're looking at savings of $300,000 to $400,000. That gap is closing fast. In the last year, home prices jumped 12%, and every month, that window narrows. Now move south to Tampa, and you'll see a completely different force at work. This isn't about tech campuses or research triangles. This is about Florida's tax advantage finally converging with actual urban infrastructure. For decades, Florida meant retirement communities and beach towns. Tampa in 2025 means finance jobs relocating from New York, healthcare systems expanding to serve population growth that hit 3% annually, and a downtown that actually functions like a city instead of a sprawling suburb. The corporate relocations are real and they're accelerating. Firms are moving entire departments, and those employees are bringing spending power that's transforming neighborhoods in real time. The risk here isn't whether Tampa keeps growing. It's whether you can still afford to get in before the cost structure starts mirroring the cities people are fleeing. Las Vegas is the city that completely rewrote its own story, and most people still haven't noticed. Forget the Strip, forget tourism as the only industry. What happened in the last 3 years is that Vegas became a logistics and technology hub that's pulling in 25,000 to 30,000 new residents every year. The housing market saw a temporary cool down in late 2024, which created the first real buying opportunity in years. Median prices dropped about 8% from their peak, hovering around 430,000, and that dip is already reversing. Major employers like Google and Amazon expanded operations here because the talent started arriving before the company campuses did. Remote workers discovered they could cut their tax burden, slash their housing costs, and still be 2 hours from Los Angeles by car or 40 minutes by flight. The infrastructure is catching up. New schools, new transit, new entertainment options that have nothing to do with casinos. The version of Vegas that exists now is fundamentally different from the one that existed in 2020, and the migration numbers prove people figured that out. Charlotte saw something break open in 2024 that had been building for years. As a banking center, it already had the corporate infrastructure, but what changed was the lifestyle calculation. People started realizing they could have actual houses with yards, top-tier private schools, and a cost of living that's 30% below what they'd pay in comparable job markets. The metro added nearly 50,000 people in 2024, and the housing market absorbed that growth without spiraling into unaffordability. You're looking at median home prices around $400,000, which for a city with this much economic firepower is remarkable. Bank of America's headquarters anchors the financial sector, but the job growth now spans healthcare, energy, and tech. The airport is a major hub, which matters more than people think when you're trying to build a life that doesn't trap you in one place. The momentum here isn't speculative, it's structural and it's durable. Phoenix spent years being written off as unsustainable, too hot, too sprawling, too dependent on air conditioning and water it doesn't have. Then something interesting happened. The semiconductor industry decided Phoenix was the answer to domestic chip production, and suddenly, billions of dollars in manufacturing plants started breaking ground. Intel's expansion, TSMC's new facilities, the entire supply chain that follows that kind of investment. We're talking about tens of thousands of high-paying jobs that didn't exist 3 years ago. The population grew by more than 60,000 in 2024, and the housing market is tight but not broken. Median prices sit around 420,000, up about 10% from the previous year, but the job opportunities justify that cost in ways they didn't before. The heat is real, the water issues are real, but the economic transformation is also real, and people are making the calculation that the trade-offs are worth it. Nashville's story is about what happens when a city gets everything right at once. The music industry was always there, but in the last 5 years, Nashville added healthcare corporate headquarters, a surging tech scene, and a quality of life that became impossible to ignore. The population growth has been relentless, over 45,000 new residents in 2024, and the infrastructure is racing to keep up. The housing market is expensive by Southern standards, median prices pushing past 470,000, but compared to the coastal cities shedding residents, it still represents value. The job market is diverse enough that a downturn in one sector doesn't crater the whole economy. The food scene, the live music that happens every night of the week, the fact that you can actually afford to go out and enjoy the city you live in, these aren't trivial factors. They're why people stay once they arrive, and they're why Nashville keeps appearing on every migration and quality of life ranking. Atlanta is the giant that never gets the credit it deserves, probably because it's been growing for so long that people stopped noticing. But what happened between 2023 and now is that Atlanta transitioned from regional hub to genuine competitor for national corporate headquarters. The film industry built permanent infrastructure here. The tech sector exploded with over 20,000 jobs added in 2024 alone. Hartsfield-Jackson remains the busiest airport in the world, which makes Atlanta the most connected city in America for anyone who travels for work. The metro added nearly 80,000 residents in 2024, and the housing market offers something rare: options at multiple price points. You can find homes in desirable neighborhoods for under $400,000, or you can spend twice that for something in Buckhead. The diversity of the economy means that Atlanta doesn't live or die by one industry's fortunes, and that resilience is exactly what people want in a moment of economic uncertainty. Boise went from overlooked to overcrowded in what felt like 18 months during the pandemic, then cooled off just enough to become interesting again. What you're seeing now in 2025 is the stabilization. Prices dropped about 6% from their 2022 peak, creating an entry point that didn't exist for years. The median home price is around $460,000, which sounds high until you realize the people moving here are coming from California, Seattle, and Portland, where that same money gets you a fraction of the space. The job market is smaller than major metros, but growing steadily, with healthcare, tech, and finance all expanding. What Boise offers that you can't get in bigger cities is immediate access to outdoor recreation that doesn't require a 2-hour drive. That quality of life component isn't trivial when you're deciding where to spend the next decade of your life. Salt Lake City combines things that rarely exist in the same place: a thriving economy, affordable housing by coastal standards, and proximity to world-class outdoor recreation. The tech sector here is nicknamed Silicon Slopes, and it's not marketing hype. Major companies like Adobe and Salesforce have substantial operations here, and the startup ecosystem is generating real exits and real wealth. The population grew by over 30,000 in 2024, and the housing market, while not cheap, hasn't spiraled into absurdity. Median prices are around $500,000, which reflects the demand but hasn't reached the point where middle-class families are completely priced out. The cultural conservatism is real and matters to some people, but the economic opportunity and lifestyle access are convincing enough people that the trade-offs make sense. Austin is interesting because it's the cautionary tale that still works. Yes, it got overhyped. Yes, prices exploded. Yes, traffic is a nightmare. And yet, people keep coming because the job market remains one of the strongest in the country. Tesla's Gigafactory, Oracle's headquarters, the endless parade of tech companies opening offices here. Over 60,000 new residents arrived in 2024, even after years of people predicting the boom would collapse. Housing costs are high, median prices around $550,000, and affordability is a genuine problem. But for people in tech, finance, and professional services, the calculus still works because salaries are competitive with coastal cities while taxes remain non-existent. Austin is expensive now, but it's expensive because the demand is real and sustained, not because of speculation. Huntsville, Alabama is the city no one outside the South talks about, which is exactly why it matters. This is where NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center lives, where military contractors build missile defense systems, where aerospace engineering is the dominant industry. The job market is specialized but incredibly stable, and the cost of living is shockingly low for a city with this much high-tech employment. Median home prices are around $280,000, which in 2025 makes Huntsville one of the last metros where a single income can still buy a house. The population grew by 15,000 in 2024, which might not sound like much until you realize that's significant growth for a metro this size. Huntsville isn't trying to be Nashville or Austin. It's offering something different, high-paying technical jobs in a place where money actually stretches. Greenville, South Carolina is what happens when manufacturing comes back but looks completely different from the old factory towns. BMW's manufacturing plant anchors the economy, but the job growth now spans advanced manufacturing, logistics, and professional services. The downtown transformation over the last decade turned Greenville from a pass-through city into an actual destination with restaurants, parks, and culture. The housing market is still affordable. Median price is around $350,000, and the population grew by 12,000 in 2024. The proximity to both Asheville and Atlanta means you're not isolated, but the pace of life and cost structure feel like a different era. For people exhausted by the grind and expense of major metros, Greenville is proving you don't have to sacrifice economic opportunity to get your life back. Sarasota, Florida is where the Florida migration isn't just retirees anymore. Yes, the beaches and weather still attract older residents, but what changed in the last 3 years is the arrival of remote workers and young families who realized they could have waterfront access and excellent schools without the chaos of Miami or the sprawl of Tampa. The housing market is expensive, median prices above $500,000, but the lifestyle value is undeniable. The job market is smaller and more service-oriented, which means Sarasota works best for remote workers or people in healthcare, real estate, and hospitality. The population grew by 18,000 in 2024, and the infrastructure is genuinely good, which isn't something you can say about every Florida boomtown. Charleston, South Carolina offers something increasingly rare, a city that feels like a city, with walkable neighborhoods, historic architecture, and a food scene that rivals anywhere in the country, all while maintaining a cost structure that doesn't require 2 incomes to survive. The tech sector is growing, Boeing has a major presence, and the port drives logistics and trade jobs. Median home prices are around $470,000, which is high for the South but justified by what you're getting. The population grew by 20,000 in 2024, and unlike some boomtowns, Charleston has the infrastructure and planning to absorb that growth without collapsing into traffic nightmares and failing schools. The risk here is that Charleston becomes the next Nashville or Austin, where success breeds unaffordability, but right now, the window is still open. Fort Myers, Florida closes out this list because it represents the Florida bet in its purest form. Lower taxes, beach access, and a cost of living that's significantly below Miami or South Florida, even after recent price increases. The median home price is around $400,000, and the job market, while not tech-heavy, is stable and growing in healthcare, construction, and services. The population surged by over 30,000 in 2024, driven largely by retirees, but increasingly by remote workers who want the Florida lifestyle without the Florida prices of the bigger cities. Hurricane risk is real and getting worse, which is the dark cloud over every Florida city. But people are making the calculation that the tax savings and lifestyle benefits outweigh the insurance costs and climate uncertainty. Here's what ties all 15 of these cities together. They're not the places people moved to in 2020 or 2022. They're the places people are moving to now in late 2025 after the initial pandemic chaos settled and everyone recalibrated what actually matters. They offer job growth that's real, not speculative. Housing markets that are tight but not completely broken. Quality of life that doesn't require 6 figures just to participate. And they're all at an inflection point where getting in now versus waiting 2 years will determine whether you're an early adopter or someone who arrives after all the value is extracted. The cities that dominated the last decade aren't the ones that will dominate the next one, and the people who recognize that early are the ones who will build wealth and stability while everyone else is still looking at outdated maps. If you're serious about understanding where American opportunity is actually concentrating right now, subscribe to this channel because we're tracking the economic and demographic shifts that determine which cities rise and which ones decline. The next few years will separate people who moved with the data from people who moved based on reputation, and that difference will